I grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania, small town, went to college, Penn State, got a degree in civil engineering. I did that for about 10 months and then I retired at age 23. And as part of the path of finding out who I was, what I wanted to do in life, I journeyed up to New Hampshire. And for a number of years, I worked as a volunteer at a children's home, helping to build solar post and beam houses, put in the gardens, and planted my first apple trees. And there was something about that connection with the trees, with the land, that really worked for me, that really made my heart sing. From there, I went on to purchasing this farm with my wife, Nancy. This is a way up there in the north mountain farm, not something you'd particularly buy because you want to make your living at growing fruit or you want to make your living at farming, as much as just something that really resonated as a place to raise our children and develop that kind of homestead farm, but also a community farm, something that could help to feed the people in the places, the nearby towns where we live. This land was first settled in the 1880s by the Sullivan family. They built the house, they built a barn, had some dairy cows and some workhorses, and of course they planted a few apple trees. Otherwise, this was basically an animal farm, so there was a lot of pastures that had been cleared, the forest had been taken out so that they could make more grazing land, and when we came, a lot of that was starting to grow back, the typical New England cycle of the trees making their return. The two sites that I planted apple trees here on the farm were both overgrown pastures filled with lots of wild apples. And a lot of those trees were removed so I could put in my own trees. A couple of them I grafted to and developed a tree as well. But for the most part, the trees that I have here in the orchard were planted starting in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and into the 2000s. When I first started growing apples, I didn't know a thing. I didn't want to get involved with using chemicals. I understood their place, the reason that people use different chemicals to control insects and diseases. But on the other hand, I was really drawn to organic agriculture. We were doing that in our garden, and I wanted to do it in my orchard. This was in the mid-1980s where I first started to understand which bugs were doing what are the spray options I have, and I was basically relying on the Rodale literature of the time, the kind of substitution approach to organics where rather than using a chemical spray, a quote natural material is used instead. But I hadn't really changed the thought process, the paradigm of why you spray, when you spray, what you spray. It was all about, I have a problem, I want to take care of the problem. What it needed to be about was, how can I make these trees really healthy so that I have a whole lot less problems? And once I started to turn that around and started to realize the importance of soil fertility, the whole thing about the arboreal food web and competitive colonization, and used the knowledge that my wife Nancy provided me with about the healing plants, about nettle, comfrey, and horsetail. All of that started to come together in my mind about 10 years ago as I started to shape a whole new approach to orcharding. And that's what the holistic orchard is all about.